Hey guys, my name is Victoria, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm filming my March wrap-up, not my March TBR, almost wanted to say that, in which I'm going to show you all the 9 books that I read last month. Yay! We're gonna start right away. Just a quick disclaimer. As always, I have resources to educate yourself on the matter, on the war in Ukraine. Do you say in the Ukraine in English as well? Because in Germany we say in der Ukraine, and I've only heard people saying in the Ukraine. I don't know. It's not really important. What's important is that we educate ourselves on the matter and that we can do our part. So if you want to donate or educate yourself, I have reliable, loyal, and trustworthy sources, as always, linked in my description box. And if you have any that you want to share, please leave them down below in the comments so everyone can use them, I guess. Another quick disclaimer. I know it was maybe a bit annoying in my last few sit-down videos, but my dog loves sleeping in my room, and because of his heart condition and stuff, he snores the entire time. So I hope it's not as loud as it was last time, and if it is, I'm really sorry, but I don't want to wake him. He's old. He needs to sleep, okay? Where's my phone? Okay, I'm sitting on it. Let's talk about the books that I read this month. It was a really good reading month, honestly. I destroyed almost every single book. I enjoyed almost every single book. Let's start with The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. The Ocean at the End of the Lane was a very special book. I don't think I've listened to anything like it. By the way, I listened to, I think, 8 out of the 9 books that I'm going to show you today, because I'm currently having a really hard time sitting down and reading. I constantly fidget. It's a big problem when talking to my therapist about it. So I love listening to books currently, and I listened the entire month. So let's talk about The Ocean at the End of the Lane. This was such a special and unique read because it's sort of like a fairy tale, very magical, very not supernatural. I don't know, it is supernatural, but the focus is not on the supernatural. What's special about this book is that the entire story and the supernatural elements were told as if they were completely normal, as if nothing about it was crazy or supernatural or abnormal. Sometimes you have books where the hero doesn't know anything about like the fantasy world and is completely startled and shocked at what is out there. And this book made it so accessible and so easy to just follow the journey of the protagonist and not focus on this, oh my god, this is supernatural, this is abnormal, I have to focus on that. We rather focus on how does the hero or how does the protagonist escape. It's not a fantasy novel, it's more like a fairy tale. I'm going to read you the summary, which is really, really vague. When I read this, I was like, okay, I don't really know what it's about. I just saw the cover and the title, and I thought, okay, this sounds really pretty. I'm going to read you the summary, which was really really short. This bewitching and harrowing tale of mystery and survival and memory and magic makes the impossible almost too real. And I'm going to look on BookBeat because I listened to this on BookBeat. Maybe the description will be a bit more detailed. Nope, it has the same. We meet the protagonist, and I forgot his name. Great. Okay, here is a better description. I'm going to read it to you. It tells the story of a man who returns to Sussex for a funeral and then finds himself driving randomly to the scenes of his childhood. He is drawn to the Hemstock farmhouse, wherein he remembers there lived 3 generations of powerful and mysterious Hemstock women. The youngest of these, Letty, used to call their duck pond her ocean. So the ocean at the end of the lane is actually just a duck pond, which I really loved. Later revealed in a beautiful passage to be a metaphor for what might best be described as the cosmic life force. And it is by this ocean that the narrator sits down and recalls the magical and traumatic events that befell his 7-year-old self. Those events get scary when the hero wakes with a coin choking his throat. He and Letty kind of form this beautiful friendship. I don't think we get the protagonist's name. I just looked for it for like 5 minutes and I couldn't find it. I was like, there's a reason why I can't remember it. Maybe we don't know it. After listening for like 20 minutes, I knew I had to have this in a physical copy because the mystery and the magic surrounding this book is just insane. It's beautiful. And I love the sentence that's when I broke it off, like the hero wakes up choking on a coin. And this whole book is kind of built as a metaphor, so there's so much poetic value in it, which I loved. But I thought multiple times that the protagonist, especially in the beginning when I wasn't familiar with the story, that the protagonist was just dreaming and everything was so supernatural. But apparently, at least that's what the book says, he wasn't dreaming and he really did experience all these traumatic things. There is an antagonist in there that is like a monster, and he describes her, this Ursula person, she's called Ursula, as a monster, and she seduces his dad and his relationship with his family and everything. It's just, there is just so much in this book, and I can only recommend it to people who really like fairy tales and mystery, but who are adults. This is not a fairy tale for young people. It even gets a bit gross and hard to listen to because the author included such small details that sometimes you didn't need, but in the end worked as such a beautiful method to form a picture, to paint all these images in your head. So this was such a special read. I gave this 4 stars, and I can only think that I will give it 5 stars after having maybe like a physical copy, because this is a book I would recommend you to read, or you read it and listen to it at the same time, because I think while only listening to it, things just got lost. That's sometimes what happens, but in a lot of the books that I listen to, this is not such a huge problem, but in this book, it's like you really want to get every single word out of this novel, and it's a really special one. It's unique, and I don't think there's anything like it out there, or I have read anything like it. So yeah, I'm really happy that I read this, and it was a great start to this reading month. Let's continue. I think I've said everything I wanted to say. The next book I read or listened to was The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. This was a new release, and I didn't know that. I just clicked on it, and this is a fiction mystery thriller. It says to be very slow paced, and while I was listening to it, I think it has like 12 hours or something. I think it could have been shorter, but let's talk about it first. I gave this book 3.75 stars. I'm going to read you the summary because I'm just bad at summarizing books. Jess needs a fresh start. She's broke and alone, and she's just left her job under less than ideal circumstances. Her half-brother Ben didn't sound thrilled when she asked if she could crash with him for a bit, but he didn't say no, and surely everything will look better from Paris. Only when she shows up to find a very nice apartment. Could Ben really have afforded this? He is not there. The longer Ben stays missing, the more Jess starts to dig into her brother's situation and the more questions she has. Ben's neighbors are an eclectic bunch and not particularly friendly. Jess may have come to Paris to escape her past, but it's starting to look like it's Ben's future that's in question. Very, very cool description, or the last sentence, I really liked it. I haven't read lots of thrillers in my book reading life, which started like last year. And I think this was a thriller, and I get why people call it slow paced. Again, I think there were scenes that were just so unnecessary for me. And I thought, okay, this could have been, you could have just leave it out. But I thought in the end that it was maybe a bit more realistic with these scenes that were not as thrilling or not as like focused on the matter. There was lots of confusion in the beginning. It wasn't like, oh god, he's missing, he's not there, I'm gonna look for him right this second. So the exposition of this book, the beginning, is very slow. Like the start is like maybe a bit hard to get through, but from the start it's clear that some things are wrong, and that's what you get immediately. Maybe it wasn't as like eventful the entire time, except for the like last bit where everything was like solved. But I think because of that it was slightly more realistic, even though the pace had to suffer sometimes. Yeah, I think it's a good, realistic, thrilling novel that had in mind, okay, this is going to be a bit slow paced, or these scenes might be a bit boring for some people to read, but it's realistic and it's believable. I wasn't a huge fan of this book. I think I would give it rather 3.5 stars, not 3.75. I liked listening to it, and I liked the solution in the end. But, I think there weren't a lot of characters that I found really, really enticing, really interesting. There was one character, I knew he was a foul character. He was definitely a flawed character, which I liked, but I knew that he had some secrets. In the end, everyone had secrets. And that was fun to, like, reveal and unravel and then think about. It was my favorite. It wasn't bad. It was an enjoyable listen. And the audiobook was really good because my audiobook had multiple narrators, so every single character had a new narrator, which I loved. It almost felt like not just an audiobook, but a like audiobook experience. In German, we have 2 words for this. We have Hörbuch and Hörspiel, so one of them is like audiobook and the other one is audio game, which basically just describes that the story is like told with multiple speakers and then music and all that stuff. It was fun, it was really cool. So yeah, I really liked the audiobook. It wasn't my favorite book, but it was okay. It was like the middle ground, it's fine. The next book I read is probably one of my favorite romances I've ever read, and it's Best Laid Plans by Rowan Parrish. I gave this book 5 stars, and it's a queer romance, and I'm gonna read you the summary, because I loved it. Charlie Matheson has spent his life taking care of things. When his parents died 2 days before his 18th birthday, he took care of his younger brother, even though that meant putting his own dreams on hold. He took care of his father's hardware store, building it into something known several towns over. He took care of the cat he found in the woods, so now he has a kid. When a stranger with epic tattoos and a glare to match starts coming into Matheson hardware, buying things seemingly at random and lugging them off in a car so beat up Charlie feels bad for it, his instinct is to help. When a man comes in for the 5th time in a week, Charlie can't resist intervening. So yeah, and that's how their story starts. It's a love story. So these two characters that are very different, but complement each other so well. And I say that in so many reviews that I give to romance novels, that, oh my god, they complement each other so well. But it's been some time since I've read a love story with the two protagonists really complementing each other, and not just, oh, he's like this and he's like this, but even in ways where they're slightly similar, they're able to provide something for each other that the other one is like missing. And I just love their story, and I don't want to say too much about it, because, you know, I don't. It is spicy, by the way, so if you're not a fan of explicit scenes, then this book might not be for you. But I'm so glad that I read it. One scene really stood out to me. It's where they have a conversation about consent and consensual sex and all that stuff regarding sex, and it's detailed. But I loved this scene because it shows such an open conversation and such an open discussion of sex and all the things regarding sex, and I loved it. I found it so beautiful and very unique for a book, because if you read any like very spicy or as the English say, apparently racy books, sometimes it just goes so fast, and sometimes they just get it on and they don't really have that much of a talk with each other. Listening to that scene was just such a delight, not really because of the subject itself, but because I've never read anything like it, and I've never seen anything like it in a movie or shows or something. So it was such a great scene. I'm so happy that they kept that in the book, and I think it's also very fundamental for our generation, I guess, or just making this conversation less taboo and more open. So yeah, I loved it. I'm not going to say too much about it. I love the characters, I love Charlie, I loved Rye. They each have their trauma, they each have their problems and issues, and I'm so glad that they work it out. And my favorite thing about this book is that there was no miscommunication book. I barely read any romance novel where miscommunication was like the crux of the story, the bane of the story, like the thing that makes everything go bad. And this book wasn't like that. Normally romance novels, they have a similar method of storytelling. It's like the pyramid, right? How dramas are built. I don't know if you had that in school, but I had. So exposition, they meet, then they get interested in each other, and then they start something and everything's going great, and you have the climax and woohoo, and everything's great. But then, oh god, something happens. And most of the time in these books, it's the miscommunication trope. Everything is just like, oh, I didn't say this, and this one character didn't say that, and oh god, everything is falling apart. And I hate that. I know so many people who hate it, but I know so little books or so little romances that don't have that as a trope, where they just talk it out, where they can have this climax of, oh god, something bad is happening, but they resolve it with talking because they're adults, because they're able to do it. I get why this might be such a thing in like high school novels. I get it, but I'm so glad that they didn't do it here, because Charlie and Rye, they're like in their 30s. So yeah, they had a fight, but they talk it out, and this might be a spoiler, but I think it's so important to mention it because I loved it so much. This just shows healthy communication, makes me believe in their love, makes me believe in their continuing success in their relationship, and I'm so happy that I read this book. I'm so happy that I listened to it and finally found a romance novel that does not have miscommunication as their method of, you know, disruption. So yeah, I'm really happy. The next book I read was a play. I read Romeo and Juliet, finally, by William Shakespeare. I mean, I was familiar with this, I don't know, I think everyone sooner or later is exposed to that, to the most famous love story of star-crossed lovers. But yeah, I finally read it, and if you don't know, I always read Shakespeare plays while watching them simultaneously. Because I am enrolled at university, I am able to have access to a site that is called Drama Online, and that's why I can watch a lot of Shakespeare plays, and it's so much fun. I love it. Romeo and Juliet, if you don't know it, because some people just might not, it's about two families and they have an ongoing trial, an ongoing, you know, they're foes, they hate each other, they're enemies, and they have ongoing fights. And in between these families, there are these two people that start to fall in love with each other. Romeo Montague and Juliet Capulet. Star-crossed lovers, we have seen it. That's, I think, the most famous original story of we're from different worlds, but we love each other, so we're gonna make it work or not. And a lot of times it ends in tragedy, because this is a tragedy. Yeah, should I spoiler you? I mean, it's in the prologue. It does not have a happy ending, and since Shakespeare says in the prologue that they both die multiple times, I think he says it 3 times, yeah, they die at the end, and it's tragic, it's sad. I thought for a long time that like Shakespeare invented star-crossed lovers, but he actually just made it very popular. We have such stories, I think, in the Bible and from mythology and all that stuff, so that concept existed already, but Shakespeare made it famous and Shakespeare made it popular. I think he was inspired by Pyramus and Thisbe, by the way, a subplot told by characters in A Midsummer Night's Dream, so that is fun. So Pyramus and Thisbe, they came from different worlds and fell in love, and they also died at the end. Yeah, they also died at the end. And he decided to take pen to paper and write something else, if he was the one who did it. If you know a bit about Shakespeare, if you are familiar with the rumor of, was it actually Shakespeare? Did he actually exist? Was it him that wrote all the plays? Please tell me what you think, because I can't decide. There's so much evidence that says that he actually was not the writer, but he was just the one that put his name underneath everything to protect the one who wrote the plays, but that person wasn't allowed to publish plays. But I don't know. It's so interesting. I'm so excited to learn more about Shakespeare. Anyway, I love Romeo and Juliet. It's one of my favorite Shakespeare plays. I have a system of like, I like this play because it's funny. I like this play most because of the language. I like this play the most because of the characters. So Romeo and Juliet is, from like the language aspect, my favorite. A Midsummer Night's Dream and Twelfth Night, they're like on the same spot. I can't decide. Also, I haven't watched that many Shakespeare plays. Twelfth Night and Midsummer Night's Dream is because they're so fucking funny, and I love when Shakespeare writes comedy, or wrote. And Macbeth is my favorite because of like the storyline, the characters, and I guess the mental health aspect. It's just great. I love it. So one thing I want to say to Romeo and Juliet, I gave this 4.75 stars. That it's a very long play. I always watch the Globe Theatre performance most of the time, and they're very long because they include most of the stuff that is in the book or in the play. And one thing that I noticed is, because I watched Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet like multiple times, you know, with Leonardo DiCaprio, is that they robbed Juliet in that movie of great lines, of great monologues. While I watched the play, I was like, she has so many amazing monologues. She's not saying a single one from the play in the movie. And I think that's so sad, because there are so many characters that get to say great things, and you know, a 3-hour-long play, it's hard to put in a movie, but there were so many scenes where I thought, wow, this is amazing. I'm so sad that they didn't put in the movie. Yeah, just sad that she was robbed in the movie. That's all I want to say. So if you want to get the full experience, please watch or read the play, because that is better. The next one is the one I actually read in physical copy. I read You've Reached Sam by Dustin Tao, and I gave this 4 stars, yes. And I'm gonna read you the summary. How do you move forward when everything you love is on the line? 17-year-old Julie has her future all planned out. Move out of her small town with her boyfriend Sam, attend college in the city, spend a summer in Japan. But then Sam dies, and everything changes. Desperate to hear his voice one more time, Julie calls Sam's cell phone just to listen to his voicemail, and Sam picks up the phone. What would you do if you had a second chance at goodbye? We follow Julie through her journey of grief, like a week after Sam died, with flashbacks that I really, really enjoyed. And we see Julie struggle, and we see her succeed, and we see her, you know, we see her going on with her life and trying to wrap her head around that, like the love of her life is gone, that her future will not go according to plan. Then additionally, receiving bad news. And then we also see her so happy that she's able to have a continuing connection with Sam through their phones, that they're able to talk. but the reader really gets that she's just not ready to say goodbye. And she eventually sees that too. She's like, how am I supposed to say goodbye to that person I love so much? And I can't believe that he's dead. And a good thing is that we not only focus on her grief in this book, we also see her trying to move on, making mistakes, reconnecting with friends that she like neglected and that neglected her, and you know, all that, a lot of the struggle that is pretty realistic after you lose someone. I thought that this book would make me cry more, because until the like last 5 pages I did not cry, but then eventually it's in the summary, so I'm just going to say it. You know that she has to say goodbye to Sam, that their connection is not going to last. And I just imagine myself in that situation if I lost someone so quickly and abruptly that it completely shook my world and turned my world upside down. And then having a connection with them, being able to talk to them, but then having to say goodbye. Like, that broke me, and I cried at the, like, as I said, last 5 pages. I like this book. As I said, I gave this 4 stars. I would recommend it. I think it's a good book about grief, about mourning, also about trying to move on when you're actually not ready. And that is something I tried focusing on, especially through therapy. I feel like that aspect of not being ready, whether it is you're not ready to say goodbye or you're not ready to move on, it can be applied to a lot of situations in your life. Through that book, I asked myself the question more, am I actually ready to let this go? Or am I ready to take this step right now? Or do I need some time? Do I need to take a step back? And really accepting that. I think it's important to remember that in our fast-paced society where everything is going by so fast. And everyone is always on the lookout for, I need to be successful, without really taking the time and taking things in, even if they're painful. Everyone is like, oh, you have to be okay, when it's clear that we're not okay, especially our generation or my generation. It was just so good to see how Julie desperately wanted to move on, but then eventually accepted that she just wasn't ready. And accepting your feelings and taking everything in and allowing yourself to take a step back, allowing yourself to say, okay, hold on, I'm just not ready to let this go yet. I need to go through this first, or I need to be in this place first before I open the next door or before I take the next step. And that is so important, and that book reminded me of that, and I think it's really well represented. I love the representation in this book. I loved all the characters. My favorite character is Oliver, Sam's best friend, and through, sadly, Sam's death, new connections also are built and thrive, and that is beautiful to see, even though it has all this sad and you know, terrible undertone. But yeah, I really like this book. I'm really happy that I read it. It did not destroy me as much as I thought it would, but I did feel it and it reminded me of a lot of things. Definitely taught me some lessons, and I think that's a good book. We love sad books. The next book is The Year Shakespeare Ruined My Life by Danny Jensen. I gave this 3.5 stars. This book is about Alison Green, and she's desperate to be valedictorian. And she's a very ambitious girl. She just wants to succeed in everything, go to a great college, and, you know, again, be valedictorian, be appreciated for all the hard work she does. But she can also not say no. So she takes on the role of producer in her school's production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. It's just a train wreck, which I liked listening to. It was very high school. By the way, there's a cute relationship, a subplot of a love story. Alison meets a girl and finds her very, you know, interesting, and they start dating, they start, you know, they have their problems. It's typical high school. So very easy language, very easy storytelling with the undertones of like the Shakespeare aspect, and that's the reason why I read it. I liked listening to it, but sadly the narrator in this book had such a high voice that I thought the entire time that they were like, I don't know, 13, 14 years old, when in reality I think they were around 17 or 18, and that like caught me off guard, and I was like, wait, are they seniors? Are they juniors? Did I miss something? I probably did. But yeah, sometimes it was a bit confusing because I thought this sounds so more of a like young teenager and less like a young adult, but you know, it's what it is. Apart from that, it was a very easy book. It wasn't anything very complicated. But Alison as a character, I felt sorry for her sometimes because she had to deal with so many things at once. Yeah, there's just all these things piling up, and I feel like she's the perfect person to describe, with like so many books running all the time and just getting crushed under that weight. And it's just was a fun story to listen to. Nothing immensely special, but I liked listening to it. I would have liked more Shakespeare undertones. I would like more Shakespeare references, and it is more fun when you know the play Midsummer Night's Dream, so you actually understand everything. If you don't know the play that well, it won't be complicated, but if you know it, it will be more funny. So yeah, not the most incredible book, but definitely one I enjoyed listening to. My battery was full, so if anything looks different, it's because of that. Okay, the next book I read is one I never thought I would read, or I listened to it, which is The Duke and I, the first in the Bridgerton series by Julia Quinn. I gave this book 3 stars, and I told you about it in my TBR. The reason why I read this book is because I wanted to find out if it had the same atmospheric effect that the show has, because I love the show, I do. I do not watch it because of the love story, really, or the love stories. I watch it mainly because I love that period, even though women had 0 rights. I love that the show had more representation than it would have been accurate back then, you know, that they gave the part of the Duke in the first book to an actor of color. I loved that so much, and the amount of people of color could have been more. The 2 main families of the show being completely white, but I love that they didn't give a fuck about historical accuracy with the representation of people of color. What I would have liked, obviously, is more representation of the LGBTQ+ community, because if you can't change that, why not change this? That's a matter of representation, and I talked about it in my TBR. But you know, I listened to the first book to see what the books are like, if they had any of the subplots that I, for example, found very interesting in both season 1 and season 2. And yeah, you could say I was a bit disappointed. You know, the books focus on the love story, and this book is about Daphne and Simon. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, like Bridgerton, if you've never seen it, these books are set in the Regency era, or in 1813 in the 19th century. And the Bridgertons live in London. These books center around the noble folk, so barely any commoners. So this is really on the people that have a lot of money, that have a reputation. The families have to live with all their duty and pressure of society. And this book starts with Daphne, the 4th child of Violet Bridgerton, starting her 2nd season, being out. And if you have no idea what that means, I'm gonna explain it real quick. The social season is always for a few months in a year. The women that are of age are now presented to society, and yeah, the only goal is to get married, basically, and find a noble gentleman to, you know, provide for them, to take over family, whatever, and, you know, get the children thing going, because that's the only thing that women were supposed to do back then. And these books, very stereotypical for these books set in that time, you know, they're very spicy. They center around the thing that nobody talked about back then. I would have never listened to this book if it weren't for the show. And as I said, the love story of Daphne, who meets a Duke, the Duke of Hastings, Simon, is at its center, at its core. These 2 meet, and Simon is not interested in marriage. He does not want to marry at all, but to make Daphne more desirable and to make him sort of unavailable, because, you know, he's a duke, everyone is interested, every single mother wants their daughter married to this man. So he's like, you know what, wir können 2 Fliegen mit einer Klatsche schlagen. Meaning we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. It's so funny, in English you say you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. It's kind of very violent. And in German, the basic translation of 2 Fliegen mit einer Klatsche schlagen is to beat 2 flies with 1. I don't know, what is Klatsche? Klatsche is such a nice word. Fly swat. So yeah, make him unavailable and make her more desirable, and it works. Their ruse works out, but they fall in love with each other, obviously. This book is very problematic. I will not focus on that too much. I will link a video down below by Jack Edwards where he really talks about this in depth, but there were scenes where there was non-consensual sex. Yeah, not great. I would not recommend it. And coming back to the subplots that I was really interested in the show, it had like 0. It had 0 subplots, but the focus is on Daphne and Simon and their love story. How they get from strangers to friends to lovers, and very complicated, desirable, I don't know, passionate love, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's basically it. Wasn't a huge fan of this book, but it showed me that these books really focus on the love story themselves and not really on the rest. Let's continue. The next book I read was also one from the Bridgerton series. You know, finding out that these books focus on the love stories wasn't always bad, because I was able to listen to the one book that, or the one love story that I'm interested in, because I'm a huge fan of Penelope and Colin in the show. Colin is the third child in the Bridgerton family, so Daphne's brother, and Penelope Featherington is kind of like, she's the wallflower. Nobody really notices her. She's 2 stones heavier than everyone, so nobody finds her pretty, and you know, she's really unremarkable, but she's not, obviously, but to society she is, which is sad. I gave this book 4.5 stars. I'm just a huge fan of them. I love them so much. I don't want to say too much in case I spoiler everyone. So the season of Colin and Penelope is coming. I don't know when. I don't know if it's going to be season 4 or season 3. The showrunner already confirmed that they will not go in order, so next it would be Benedict, the second child of the Bridgerton series, Bridgerton family, and the third in the book series. There is a slight chance, or there is a chance that they will continue with Penelope and Colin, so I don't want to say too much, but it's their love story, how they go from like best friends to lovers, and how Colin learns that there are other sides to Penelope and how powerful and great she actually is. Because what I have missed, what I forgot to say, is that in the books there is like this gossip monger called Lady Whistledown who spreads these society papers, or who writes these society papers, and then they spread through town and it's a huge success. But she names names, and you know what other newspapers would not do. And yeah, she is the queen of gossip, and you find out who it is in this book, and it's just a lot of fun. And people who watch the show know who she is, but I'm not going to spoiler anyone yet. Or now, in this moment. Yeah, I loved this book. I really did. I loved seeing Penelope going from this wallflower character to really showing her true self, and I hope that she's able to do that in the show as well, because there's more to her than just, oh, nobody notices me. I listened to it because I love Colin and Penelope in the show, and I can't wait to see what they do in the show, and the steamy scenes were good, okay? Normally I'm like, if you asked me, should we put in a steamy scene? I'm like, no. I'm just not that interested. But, you know, those scenes were good. You know, they were good. Anyway, I think for me it's just these scenes show that Penelope, despite what everyone thinks, is desirable in that way, which I really liked. Okay, I think this is enough about that book. My voice is leaving me, but we have one more book to talk about, which is a book my sister read to me actually, which was a lot of fun. And she read Krabbert by Ottfried Preußler. This is a German book, and my sister wanted to read it to me for ages because I have not read it. If you don't know, I hated books. I hated reading. I could not sit still, and I started reading books for enjoyment in 2016, and really started reading books excessively last year. So that's kind of like the historical background explained. Perfect, let's continue. So this is a story for children. It's scary, so I would not read it to like very young children, but we're going to just read the summary. Set within a world of sorcery and wizardry, Krabbert tells the story of a 14-year-old beggar boy lured to a mysterious mill by a series of frightening dreams and apparitions. Sorry, nicht apparitions, apparitions. Nicht apparition, the Denglish. He becomes an apprentice to the master of the watermill, where he joins the 11 other young journeymen who work there. Much to his surprise, Krabbert soon discovers that the mill is actually a school of black magic, and he is expected to learn much more than just a normal miller's trade. Krabbert studies hard and becomes the master's star pupil, but when he falls for a local village girl, the depth of the master's evil and the darker secrets of the mill begin to reveal themselves. One by one, his fellow classmates perish from mysterious, unexplained accidents, and Krabbert realizes he must use all of the dark magic skills he has learned to secure his escape. This was such a nuanced and very poetic book to listen to, and I would definitely recommend it. I gave this book 4.75 stars. I really liked it. I also liked that my sister read it to me. It was like just such a nice experience. Yeah, she had a history with this book because it was part of her childhood, and then I was able to kind of experience it with her again because she hasn't read it in ages. As for this kind of like love story that is hinted at in this description, I'm really happy that that wasn't a huge part of the book. I'm really happy that it focused on Krabbert's learning of that magic. First of all, confusion of what this is, learning how to cope with his dreams that were very foreshadowingly Is that a word? And the strangeness of the mill and the secrets that the other boys can't tell him about. And then obviously the characters, how they interact with each other, the chemistry of the boys and the friendships that are formed, and you know, they're all kind of misfits, and I really like this book. I can't really explain it. I feel like this is a book everyone needs to read and kind of make up their own picture, make up their own mind of it. It is for children, but I believe that adults can actually get lots of things out of this book that you couldn't understand as a kid. Because this is a complicated novel. This is not really easy to get through. First of all, because of the story itself, the plot itself, and then also the poetic and lyrical and narrative elements that the author put in there. So really great, really good book. I will read it again, definitely, can already say that, but I'm losing my voice and this video is very long already, at least my raw footage is. I will love editing that. And yeah, this was the last book I read. This was it. My highlight of this month was probably Best Laid Plans. I love this book very much. And also Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. Did I actually say the title when I told you about the book? The fourth book in the Bridgerton series, which is called Romancing Mr. Bridgerton by Julia Quinn. A lot of love. Lots of love this month. Very good books I listened to. Oh yeah, Ocean at the End of the Lane was also a book that is very special and that I can't wait to have a physical copy of. Okay guys, this is it. Oh my god, I'm gonna stop talking now. Tell me about the books that you read recently and let me know what your highlight of March was. I would love to know. And yeah, if you like this video, then please give me a thumbs up and comment down below what you would like to see next. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet, and don't forget to click the little bell next to the subscription button to never miss an upload. I have to make a song out of it eventually. We're pretty close to 1,000 subscribers, which is a goal of mine, so yeah, if you want to contribute to that goal, I don't know, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet, or share my channel if you know someone, some of your friends, whoever would like my content. Yay! Most importantly, check out the sources I link in the description box. Take care of yourself, take care of your family and your friends. And yeah, I think this is it. My last video was the art of poetry, so if you're interested into watching me deep diving into some works of poetry and talking a lot about it, then you can watch my last video. It's linked down below. And yeah, this is it. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll hopefully see you in my next video. Bye! We meet Julie. Tell me about the books that you read recently. Why does she have one of the best why does she get to sit, why does she have so many sorry. Can we start? Can't really explain it. I haven't got the words. To kind of find out what she eventually I have like a sister. What was that? Okay, next one. 2 that is okay. Okay, this must be enough. Yay. Okay, bye guys. Bye. Woo.